Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Friday, October 17th, 2025. This is the Intelligence Community Roundtable with Larry Johnson and Scott Ritter, live from Moscow, where the three of us are joining others in many festivities this weekend. Larry, Scotty, even though we're spending much time together and even though we're right near each other in different rooms in this building, thank you very much for joining me. Our schedules have been crazy. Have been great to accommodate all of this. We have about 3 or 4 topics to discuss. We still need to discuss the Trump-Gaza plan. We need to analyze what's happening in Venezuela. We need to understand what President Trump and President Putin spoke about, and we need to understand the likely consequences of whatever demand President Trump made and whatever response President Putin made. So let me start with Trump-Gaza. First, to you, Larry. What assurances are there that the Israelis will comply? They never comply. Yeah. They've already killed 7 people, and they've blocked food from coming in.
Yeah, no, none. When Trump signed that deal, I described it as it's like holding a wedding, except the bride and groom weren't there. And in this case, you didn't have either the Zionist government of Netanyahu or the Palestinians represented at the actual signing ceremony. So, the reality remains, Hamas is not going to surrender its weapons. It's not going to agree to let some outside international force come in and rule over them. They're not going to surrender their own sovereignty. And Israel is not giving up on its quest from the river to the sea, to take Judea and Samaria, as they call it, and expel the Palestinians. So this is a mythological creature. It's like a unicorn.
Scotty, you agree, I'm going to guess.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, there's a plan waiting to be discovered. But as Larry said, the people that gathered together and signed a document were the people who were supposed to guarantee this, who said, we're gonna make this happen. But the people that need to make it happen, Hamas and Israel, weren't represented, and they're talking cross purposes. They're not on the same sheet of music. And the United States and its European allies haven't shown any ability at all to get Israel to, make compromises necessary. This deal will not happen if Hamas has to 100% disarm. If Hamas is allowed to retain a police force, there could be a partial disarmament, even one that you could say the majority of their weapons have been removed. But the idea that Hamas is going to surrender its weapons at a time when Israel is arming, equipping, and aiding anti-Hamas militia groups among the Palestinian community in Gaza to go down and hunt down Hamas is ludicrous. Hamas will never do that. And 2, Hamas will never give up its right to be politically represented. The president, when he announced that this peace treaty was done, his original 20 points, had Hamas disarming and had Hamas walking away. But Hamas, when they said we're going to agree to this, they put down 2 conditions. And one was, sort of an asterisk on disarmament, meaning we're willing to do it, but it's conditional. And 2, no, we're going to be part of this government that you're forming. And Trump went, okay. And if you remember early on when Hamas was executing collaborators in the street, Trump said, no, this is good. I approve of this. This is a police force. They're there. But now Trump is backing away, saying that if Hamas continues to kill people and doesn't totally disarm, there will be, hell to pay. And Israel is already in violation of the ceasefire agreement, shelling North Gaza. I think this agreement is in danger of collapsing before it ever really got off the ground.
Here's one of the far-right members of Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet, the infamous Bezalel Smotrich, saying, guess what? We're going to install settlements in Gaza. Chris, number 7.
There will be Jewish settlement in Gaza. Without settlement, there is nothing. First of all, the territories of the land of Israel are ours, but without settlement, they have no foothold. So we have patience, but we also have determination and faith.
Yeah.
So there you have it right there, Larry. They don't have settlements in Gaza now. And yet, after this so-called ceasefire, which is a step toward a possible Palestinian state, they think they're going to further peace by installing settlements?
Yeah. Look, the only way this Gaza peace deal would actually work is if Donald Trump would tell Bibi Netanyahu and the settlers, no, this is not going to happen. If you dare to do that, we're going to cut off all aid. Well, he's not going to do that. He made it very clear the other day when he was praising Miriam Adelson for the billions of dollars. You know, she's loyal first and foremost to Israel, not the United States. And this is the problem Trump faces. His constituency is largely America first, not second. Instead, Israel first under Trump, and it's just not going to hold. So this, I wrote last week the history of these previous ceasefires, and since 2017, they last less than a year. So it's a matter of time. This is not going to result in a historic peace as Donald Trump proclaimed.
Scotty, while we were in Moscow yesterday, here's what the president said about disarming Hamas. Chris, cut number 6.
On Gaza, how long will it take Hamas to disarm, and can you guarantee that is going to happen?
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
How will you do that?
I don't have to explain that to you. But if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. They know I'm not playing games. Okay? Now, we did something monumental. We got the hostages back. That was the first thing we had to do. Above all else, get the hostages back. Now, they misrepresented because we were told they had 26, 24 of dead hostages, if we can use those terms. And it seems as though they don't have that because...
So, Scotty, how would the United States government go about disarming Hamas without putting boots on the ground?
And we're not going to put boots on the ground. We would just greenlight Israel. Look, the president basically said that he defeated Hamas by providing Israel with perfect weaponry, some that he doesn't even know about, but he gave it to them and sold it to them. I believe that we would continue just to greenlight Israel going in and doing what they've been doing. It's a failed policy. It hasn't succeeded. It won't succeed, and the president will be left with egg on his face. But this is a man who only knows how to bluster, only knows how to talk tough. The problem with talking tough is sometimes people call your bluff, and the president is at risk of having his bluff called here and not being able to back his words up, because the United States isn't putting boots on the ground. We may facilitate Israeli airstrikes, but this is stupid because what can a U.S. Navy F-A-18 do that an Israeli F-35 can't? We're just talking about dropping bombs. So having American planes flown by American pilots dropping American bombs on Gaza isn't going to change, qualitatively what happens when American planes flown by Israeli pilots dropping American bombs on Gaza takes place.
Larry, let's jump to an area of the world in which you spent a lot of time with the Central Intelligence Agency and the State Department, and that is Latin America. Can I ask you a very basic question? What national security threat to the United States of America is posed by the government of Venezuela?
As they say in Spanish, nada, cero, nothing, zero. This is a contrivance. And frankly, it's been in the CIA plan since Donald Trump ordered it in 2018. That's when they created Tren de Aragua as a group. I mean, it may have existed at that time, but the CIA went to work to promote it as this major threat. It is not the primary, it's not even a secondary or tertiary source of narcotics coming into the United States. The only thing that's really come into the United States out of Venezuela have been a number of Venezuelans who have fled the country. But the fact is, Maduro does not represent a threat. But this is an unprovoked action by the United States. Trump continues to build up military forces. There are 2, I think, Marine expeditionary units offshore. There are 4 battleships with missiles on board. But Venezuela is trying to avoid a confrontation. But Trump is headed towards a confrontation, and it'll be, when it happens, it'll be a war crime.
Scotty, where is the great national debate? Where is the debate on the floor of the Congress about the pros and cons of war? Why are we going to fall into the same trap of a presidentially declared, presidentially waged war? He'll claim some sort of presidential victory. What happens when boys come home in body bags?
Well, I mean, if we have Americans coming home in body bags in significant numbers, of course, that should precipitate a problem. But the Trump administration has articulated a case for conflict that, while legally questionable, passes muster with his base. Believe it or not, his base wants this war. They're told that Venezuela is ruled by this evil man who's already been indicted by the Southern District of New York as a narco trafficker. And we need to bring this man to justice, is what they're being told. When you have a de facto case like this that has been prepared, where's the debate? I mean, it's not debatable in the United States whether Maduro is not just indicted, but a convicted. No, I think you're right. He's indicted, not convicted yet,
Right.
but an indicted narco trafficker that has fled justice, is evading justice. This is how Marco Rubio describes it. And legally, he's correct. And so now the question is, do you bring him to justice? And the way that Trump has articulated the case for war, it revolves around the very same fentanyl smuggling, narrative that he used to promote border security. So all these people are jumping up and down saying, "Oh my goodness, the border security is the best it's ever been." We got Kash Patel now bragging about how he's rounded up fentanyl this summer, and everybody being told we're doing our job to seal the border. But now we got Venezuela, which is shipping fentanyl in, and nobody's asking the question, is this true? What's your evidence, etc. They're just saying, this is what we voted for, shut it down. And unfortunately, that's why there's no debate, discussion, and dialogue, because the base doesn't want one, and the Trump administration therefore doesn't feel compelled to give them one.
And so we have a constitution of no authority, Larry.
Yeah. Well, and here Trump is murdering people on the allegation that they're carrying drugs on these boats, and you can prove very easily that those boats had no means to reach the United States. I mean, the very first one they blew up had a range of 250, 260 miles with, the 4 outboard motors on board that cigarette boat. Now, that means it could go about 260 miles. But the problem is, from the coast of Venezuela, the north coast, to, say, the Florida Keys, which is the point farthest south in the United States, that's over 1,300 miles. How in the hell does a boat that can only go 250 miles going to be transporting drugs into the United States? And yet Donald Trump ordered, and it doesn't bother me so much that Trump ordered it. What really bothers me is the military chain of command that carried out this order. It was an illegal order. They didn't push back because nobody in that boat was firing at the United States. There was no way you could make a case that it posed a direct threat to the United States. And yet the generals and colonels up and down the chain of command, and admirals, let's not forget them, went along with this.
But Scotty,
shame on them.
Scotty, does it mean anything that the admiral in charge of the Southern Command, which is a 3-year gig, resigned yesterday after just 1 year? Is there a connection, do we know, between his resignation and these illegal murderous strikes?
If there is, it hasn't been publicly articulated yet, and nor will it be, because I think resigning is one thing. Resigning by making noise could cost you, a star or a stripe in this case, and pension money. But I would imagine that according to the news, the president signed a presidential finding authorizing the CIA to carry out covert lethal action, which means that in this theater of operations, the CIA now has primacy. And I think that is something that could prompt a commander of Southern Command to step aside. Being compelled to sit back and support a constitutionally questionable action. Presidential finding just makes it legal. Temporarily, it doesn't make it constitutional at
Correct,
all.
correct. But Larry, in all your years of observing and receiving presidential findings of covert action, have you ever heard the President of the United States announce publicly that he authorized covert action?
Now it's like, I don't think he knows the definition of covert. It's not supposed to be known. It's supposed to be secret. They're not supposed to. You're not supposed to have the hand of the CIA deliberately exposed like that. And so I was not aware that the head of U.S. Southcom resigned or was forced out. Hopefully, it was a resignation in protest to say, look, I'm not going to carry out illegal orders. If that is in fact the case, then kudos on him for doing so. At least there was one person in that chain of command that had the integrity to stand up. Look, I've got a personal stake in trying to stop the fentanyl from coming into the country. I had a 39-year-old nephew that died in my house of a fentanyl overdose. I don't at all dismiss. I know the pain and anguish the families are going through, but that wrong does not justify murdering people just on the suspicion that they're carrying drugs. And what shocks me is that so many Americans go along with this, say, yeah, this is okay. I mean, it was normalized under Barack Obama when he killed Anwar al-Awlaki and Awlaki's son, both American citizens who had, while allegedly terrorists, they had not been convicted in a court of law. In the United States, we still have under the Constitution the presumption of innocence.
Right. Scotty, let's go to the topic of the moment, which occurred during our time here in Moscow, and that is the phone call between President Trump and President Putin yesterday. What do you think they said to each other? What do you think President Putin demanded of President Trump? Is there a marker? Is there a condition laid down by President Putin for him to come to Budapest and meet Donald Trump in a week or so?
I believe there is. I believe that this conversation was, to quote Mr. Ushakov, the presidential advisor, very frank. They had a frank exchange, which means they didn't agree. And I believe that President Trump was put on notice that Russia's not going to change what it's doing on the battlefield, that the Tomahawk missile, if incorporated into Ukraine's arsenal, will not have any impact on the battlefield, won't move the needle at all. But what it will do is destroy any possibility of U.S.-Russian relations and could lead to further escalation. So nothing good will come of this. And then the president, and then they put forward some other things. I believe they talked about, Kirill Dmitriev type economic pie in the sky stuff. And Putin offered to meet, which, Trump wants because he wants to be seen as facilitating this. But the condition is that Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister, and Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, have to meet first. And I believe from that, the United States has to say they will not be deploying the Tomahawk missile, because I think the meeting between Trump and Putin can't happen if Trump is holding the Tomahawk over Putin's head. Putin wouldn't meet under those conditions at all. He's not going to allow himself to have the appearances of being intimidated. Right. So the United States is going to have to back away from Tomahawk. And if you take a look at Zelensky, who fully expected to be greeted with a color guard and a red carpet and President Trump, shaking his hand coming down the plane, he's greeted by nobody. And he's walking into a completely different environment. So I have a funny feeling that the president's going to give him the bad news today, which is there won't be Tomahawks coming, and that the president's going to put a hold on everything until after his meeting with Putin.
Larry, before you respond, here is President Trump yesterday, after the conversation with President Putin, joking about Tomahawks. Cut number 5.
Tomahawks in Ukraine?
We'll be talking about Ukraine, yeah. I mean, I have the president coming in on Friday, and I know what he has to say. He wants weapons. He would like to have Tomahawks. Everyone else wants Tomahawks. And we have a lot of Tomahawks. Tomahawk is a... Do you need any Tomahawks in Argentina?
You can cross Moscow, Tomahawks.
You need them for your opposition, I guess, because see, in this country, they'd use Tomahawks for the opposition. I don't do that. I'm much nicer. The Democrats would use them if they had the chance. They're sick people. Go ahead.
He was sitting across the table from President Milei of Argentina, and it was to him that he was joking, do you want Tomahawks? Isn't this deadly, deathly, serious business, Larry Johnson?
He doesn't seem to understand it. Maybe he's confused that he thinks the Tomahawks are like it looks like a hammer with a sharp edge, what the American Indians, some of the Native American Indians carried. But, this is a weapon capable of killing people. I think it packs about a 500-pound warhead. And it is capable, though not current in its current configuration, it cannot carry a nuclear warhead, but it is capable of being configured to do so. And so if you're a Russian military planner, you just have to assume that if the United States is going to deploy it, they have to be ready for that. But it's, again, it's so cavalier. And, we've seen this steady parade of Wunderwaffen, the wonder weapons that have come down, starting, with HIMARS and the TACMs and F-16s. None of it's going to, the war is going to end and Ukraine is going to lose. That's the reality.
I'm going to let you guys go. I know you both have commitments coming up in a few minutes, and we have a commitment together coming up in an hour or so. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Scotty. See you shortly. All the best.
Okay.
And if you're watching us live in 3 minutes, Professor John Mearsheimer, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.